Welcome to the Bowlers Union, everyone. Today we have a great guest with us, one of the best coaches in the world, Kevin Shine. Shiny, how you doing?
I'm really good. Thanks, lads. As I said to you, I love listening to your podcast. I listen to them pretty much every day on the way home. I'm ticking them all off. It's been great fun. So well done to you too for doing something so entertaining but also informative.
Thanks, Sean. The only thing is now what I've noticed is every cricketer's starting to do it now. I just saw yesterday Joss Buttler and Stuart Broad. I'm like, come on, can we not just have our own little lane? Do others have to get...
You just got to keep the quality up, Barks, haven't you?
To be fair, I reckon we're pretty pleased. And obviously, we've known each other a while, both of us. We've chipped away and we've done an episode a week now for nearly a year and a half. So we're pleased with our consistency and stuff, which is pretty cool. But the real question is, are you a member, Shiny? Are you signed up for the bonus content or not?
Do you know, I don't sign up to anything, but I'm going to. I promise you. I will absolutely sign up for it. I sort of stay off the grid. You see, I don't really do social media. I generally just follow any stuff that interests me. So, as I said, your podcast goes on in the car every time there's a new one, and I'm still going through all your backlog as well. I can't believe how many you've done. That's incredible.
You've got me worried now. I'm just wondering if we haven't said anything negative about Shiny on any of these old podcasts that we keep.
Honestly, I'm so used to it. It's water off a duck's back. I'm pretty old and sort of weathered and beaten up. I can take it, honestly.
Brilliant.
We'll start off with the 5 quick-fire questions, Shiny. And this is just, you choose what you'd have. As you're an avid listener, you'll know the question. So, swing or nip?
Swing.
Pace or bounce?
Bounce.
Ooh.
Nick off or bowled?
Nick off.
Backhand slowy or knuckleball?
Back of the hand slowy.
Bouncer or Yorker?
Bouncer.
Right, so, do you know what? I thought you'd have gone pace.
Yeah, I thought that.
Interesting you chose, if we start with swing, can you tell us why swing?
Okay, so here you go. And Pop and I have great chats about this. Pop is one of the sort of my kindred spirit coaches, and wobble seam really does wind me up. I get it. I do get it. I get why it's bowled. But for me, it's a low skill ball.
Yeah.
So the ultimate skill, think Jimmy Anderson, you see those beautiful super slow-mos, sort of a really nicely angled seam. It does not move and it swings beautifully. He does it whether he's bowling in swing or away swing. Now he's got his tiny little wobble where he wants it to swing and nip. That for me is the ultimate craft. So I was also brought up in the day, we didn't know what a wobble seam was. It probably just meant that you didn't have a very good seam position. And you always were encouraged to try and get the thing to swing. And, I was lucky enough, sorry, it's a bit of a name drop. I played with Malcolm Marshall when I was at Hampshire. And he was just the ultimate craft bowler. And I was a young lunatic quick. And he used to say, Sean, you just try loading your bones up in your hand slightly differently. And I just said, Mac, I just want to bowl fast. And he said, look, one day you'll want to explore this, because you can't just try and run in the bowl fast all the time. And it was actually after a really bad injury and I was coming back, I thought, what did he say? What were the things that he was encouraging me to do then? And, and I remember watching him in the nets. He was an absolute genius. And that's when I started to learn to swing the ball. And my game changed. My career changed towards the end of my career when I was concentrating more on craft. And, that's the bit that I want all my players now as a coach to do, is become the very, very best craftsman you can. You've got a bowl wobble seam sometimes, that. But the ability to actually put the seam in the position you want, then go and work out a batter's weaknesses using that amazing craft. That's the bit that really, really does float my boat.
So
that's
great.
So well summed up. Right, we'll stop the recording and
can you go into your reason for bounce? I just thought bounce you'd have gone straight away for pace. Sorry, I thought you'd have gone pace, but you've gone bounce.
No, so I think people would say that about me because I was the lead fast bowling coach for 14 years, and everyone was looking for fast. So I think where I was lucky enough there was I was able to sort of research an awful lot based at Loughborough University, some unbelievable people to work with and answer some of the questions that I had. The fact is that when I first went into that role, 50% of all the fast bowlers we had in the England pathways were injured, and that was just for stress fractures. So I pretty much worked out early on that trying to bowl fast was a brutal thing to do. And then, to cut a long story short, the more I've coached, I now don't coach pace. I coach efficiency, flow, and feeling easy. And then I find that the bowlers do it themselves. So I'm sort of trying to get them into a flow and positions where they can then decide what they want to do with hopefully those great movement patterns that they have. So there is nothing where I say I will bowl. I will say to a player, I'm going to get you faster. If it happens, absolutely fantastic. And actually, more often than not, it generally does, because they're then able to access the movements to do that.
I'll tell you what, that philosophy won't work for you in the private sector, Shiny.
Well,
where it's all about pace.
And that's why, I look at people out there who are talking about pace, and brilliant, good on them. They're trying to make a living. I've got no problem with that, and they're passionate and they've got a philosophy. What I would say is that where I've probably been quite lucky is I've coached so many bowlers, having had 14 years working with different people coming into Lions, to pace program. I then go out into the counties, and I would look at all of the bowlers that were out there. It was really nice because they'd all be keen to be coached while you were there. So I sort of built up this portfolio of coaching, where it's not just I've been a bowling coach at one place where I might have seen 20 or 30 bowlers. It's into the hundreds. And what I've realized is that, once again, the easier that they can become with their movement patterns, with their bowling, they seem to just bowl faster. And let's face it, I mean, look at you two. Barks, you got 150 or 57 games, Wrighty 206 games, brilliant numbers, fantastic bowlers. If you were running in trying to bowl as fast as you could every single day, not sure you'd have had those careers. You've worked the game out as you've gone along. And you look at the bowlers nowadays playing international cricket, they are proper craftsmen. They all are. And you look at Cummins now, he started off speed of light bowler. He's now dropped his pace back, hasn't he? He can just hold for a while. You watch him, holds brilliantly at a good pace, probably 85 miles an hour. He holds, bang, makes a breakthrough, and he goes up for a little while, but then he drops back. But while he's been doing that, he's learned to, that grease the groove approach. He has greased that groove for technique so beautifully that, firstly, he can last. Look at the amount of games you two have played. You've learned to do that, and you've lasted. There are so many victims along the way who've tried to bowl so quick, and literally bits have fallen off of them. And that encouragement. When you get young bowlers who come in, and they are really in an early stage of their career called to be fast, so the pressure's on them. And the pressure's on them now to keep those speeds up. And we get speeds, don't we, coming in county cricket now? And and if they're not bowling fast, someone wants to know why. Whereas I look at it differently, and I say, well, let's just make sure you're bowling really well. Let's make sure that we keep you as fit as we can. With a really, really nice program that's working for you. Definitely, we would look to access more pace if we could. But I'd say, if you're looking to improve a person's pace, look at their average speed, not their top speed. Because if you're actually doing some really good stuff with what they do day to day, then they're just going to get better. The average speeds are going to go up. You're doing some good stuff with their coaching. They're able to last long. So if I was to say that my philosophy, and I think it does now surprise quite a few people. It's not about pace. It's just about efficiency, flow, and making it feel easy. If whenever I'm coaching and a bowler says to me, "Oh, that feels easy," brilliant. We know we're on the right track. And I'm not now focused on pace. So if you look at the research or PhDs that I funded when I was at the ECB, the first one was the characteristics of fast bowlers. And what we did there is got an awful lot of information because we were able to use the fastest bowlers to look at and research. It was a decent sample size. But I realised pretty quickly that there was, a shape and some headlines. So obviously a lot of data comes in, and I would say that's no good to me. Get me shapes and headlines that I can then coach. So, that was about pace. But what it also taught me was that the best fast bowlers can short circuit some of those particular shapes, and they've found a way in their own way to make themselves quicker by not necessarily following, for example, the brace front leg.
Yeah.
And what we never tried to do, or I never tried to do, was coach a brace front leg. That's a ridiculously tough thing to do. If you've not got one, you probably end up with your hip coming out of your mouth somewhere if you try to do it. It's got to feel individual and right. And that was a brilliant piece of work that came in from the Loughborough Uni guys, because it made me realise, crikey, individuality is so important, really, really important. There were guys there who were able to bowl really fast when they didn't have some of these characteristics. But on the flip side, you'd have some guys who looked really strange when they bowled, but actually got themselves into that position. So that always said to me, it doesn't have to look really nice. And actually, the more awkward they can look, you find the batters come. So I'm just struggling to pick him up a bit here. And I'm like, great. Well, I'm not going to coach that out of there. So what we try and do is find a sweet spot where they were maximising their movement patterns. They were becoming more skillful. And the key there is more skillful. They were maintaining the pace they had. And then as they got used to it and they played more cricket, funnily enough, that's the biggest one, is bowling games as much as you can, because that's where the proper learning's done. They got a bit quicker on their own, and I wasn't forcing them to do that.
I love all that, Keith. This is getting me fired up.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could do probably a whole interview on just the quick fire questions. I feel there's so much depth behind each one. I think it's brilliant. This is probably more of a preference side for you, just on nick off or bowled. You chose nick off. Why is that yourself?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's great to see the poles coming out of the ground. It is, but there was something in me. When I bowled, I was sort of over the top, tried to get a bit of bounce. It was just something when you hear that, and then you watch the ball on its way, and hopefully it gets caught. It's just a beautiful time when the world goes quiet, and you're thinking, that feels so good. Yeah. It was just something about, they've played down a line. You've got that beautiful little nick. It either goes to your keeper or one of your slip. And it's just a great, great feeling. And you got those sort of stats that come in. We're in a world of stats now. And some of them are really good, but some of them confuse me, because I know if somebody bowled at the stumps, a lot of batters nowadays, you'd be going at sixes easily in Champo cricket.
Yeah.
But I know that if for example, if I've got a big picture, I'm going to hit your stickers as hard as I can. I know that when I get that bit of movement, I'm going to get a nick off, and I'm going to be really difficult to score runs off. So it's your double whammy. I'm going at hopefully under threes, which, let's face it, all bowlers love to go at under threes. They do. It's just so good when you look up at the scoreboard and you see, I'm doing all right here. Plus you get your nick, don't you? And remember, bowlers, we're such simple folk, aren't we? We do want to keep the runs down. It's horrible when you're going at fours or fighting. I regularly did that in my career, and I was like, oh God. It's funnily enough when you're keeping those runs down that the nicks come, or you get your little nick back because you really settled into your method. And that's why I would say once I'd settled into my method of nicks, and when I look at the bowlers that I've got at Notts, your Dylan Penningtons, you've had your Luke Fletchers, your Brett Huttons, we now got Josh Chung. They're all fantastic nick-off bowlers. Really, on when it's their day, when we've got the ball swinging, once again, it's swing that comes into it. You're watching it as a coach, and you're like, every ball, because you think they're going to get a nick.
Yeah. Class. I don't want to deviate too much, but recruitment at Notts, obviously, last few years, there's been some high quality bowlers coming into the team. Are you a part of that recruitment process? Do you target people you want?
I'd like to sign every fast bowler, Wrighty. I love every fast bowler. It doesn't matter who it is, whether it's the youngest or the oldest. You know, when I come to and we play against you, I love to talk to you. I just like any bowler that wants to talk. I love it. And I don't hold anything back. If somebody ever says to me, Shine, have you seen anything? What do you think? I obviously make sure that they're happy, their coach is happy for me to talk to them. But I'm really, there's no crown jewels out there. It's just experience, isn't it? And I also love talking to, bowlers about what they do. So I've spoken to you a lot. Barks, I spoke to you at Southampton not very long ago. And I'm learning every single day. Because bowling's changing. When you stop bowling, you have to be curious about what other people are trying to do. Because as a coach, you can still remember what you did, but it's a long time ago, and the game has changed. It has definitely changed. So you're looking for those nuggets, especially from people who've stayed in the game for a very, very long time, and you two have got outstanding stats behind you. You found a way to evolve with the game. And remember, as a coach, your job is to keep evolving too. So if I can get some nuggets from you two that I can then pass on to, the younger bowlers that we've got coming through, or even, a Brett Hutton loves improving every single day. He challenges me more as a coach than anyone has ever done, because he just desperately wants to get better every single year. And, if I hear anything that's really useful, we'll have a chat about it. And he's, Brett's always got a view on the game, isn't he? He's constantly talking about it. So it's not just your younger bowlers that you're imparting knowledge to, it's your more senior guys too. And what I love to do is make sure that they're still curious about the game and still wanting to learn and get better.
I think that's really good, and that's why I've loved working with Pop. And I've been fortunate enough to work with Pop for quite a while, because we've been able to have open, honest discussions about bowling, and it can be something really fine detail or just kind of a broad kind of bowling unit perspective, and having roles and understanding and building a group of bowlers. So I think that's where you do find bowlers or players in general learn the best. So I think that's amazing, to be honest with you.
And Barks, we obviously played against Hampshire early on in the year, and Pop was down. I love it when Pops comes down, because we're either on the same bowl through wicket or we're next to each other, and we just chat the whole time. And I learned so much when I talked to Pop or Richard Johnson from Middlesex, Richo from Worcester, anyone that, when I was in my original role, I knew that I couldn't do that job on my own. Went into it in 2006, it was just too big. And I had to try and persuade directors of cricket to employ fast bowling coaches. And I said, they'll be your hardest working coach, because they've got to, have a breadth and a depth of knowledge. They've got to work with rehab bowlers. They've got to work to get them better. They've got to maintain. They've got to learn loads of different things. So now, that's one of the conversations I had that I'm most proud of, is that pretty much every county's got a fast bowling coach. An employed fast bowling coach. And I used to get Pop to go and do Lions tours for me, John O'Lyons tours or pace programs, because I wanted to give them an opportunity to give their experience to those amazing young bowlers. I've never been a coach who says, keeping them all to myself. No, get out there. You'll say it differently to me. As long as they were, loved fast bowling, loved fast bowlers, knew that the boys needed a bit of backing and protection. Fast bowlers need protection from batters. At times.
Yeah.
I was super keen to get as many brilliant voices out there working with, potentially England's next fast bowlers. And when I go back and I talk to Pop, and I saw him doing some work with John Turner, and I'm so curious to see and hear what he's doing. And it's always brilliant stuff. And that's where I think, coaches shouldn't be ever afraid to go and talk to other coaches and other players, because you're always learning from them.
I love that mindset. And actually, talking about learning, obviously we've interviewed some amazing people now on this podcast, and I swear every single episode there's like kind of, we can't show it, but there's like mic drop moments. I remember doing one with Abbo, And I literally thought I'd wasted my whole career trying to swing the ball. I was like, oh my God. But then we had Dale Steyn literally the day after, and he talked the complete opposite about swinging it, being smooth. And it was like, okay, I can kind of relax a bit now. But it's just non-stop, to be fair.
And isn't that beautiful? Because that's a different way of doing it, isn't it? And they've both been successful. So, you look at Abbo, and I was lucky enough in 2000, and I think it's 2018, Chalky White at Hampshire, director of cricket, said, Shiny, could you come down and work with our bowlers for a little bit? And I was working for the ECB there. So I went to Dave Parsons and Andy Flower, and I said, look, Chalky White's asked me to go down and do a little bit of work. Because Abbo was having a little bit of a struggle at that particular time. And he said, it might be a good opportunity for you to come in and do a little bit of work with him. So once again, when someone asks you and you get the chance to do it, I'm like, yeah, I'd love to. So, but if you thought about it at the time, you had Abbo not qualified to play for England. Dale Steyn was the overseas, not qualified to play for England. You had Fidel Edwards, not qualified to play for England. so I got asked the obvious question, and Gareth Berg, not qualified to play for England at the time. So they said, there's not a lot of bowlers of national interest there, Shiny. I said, that's a really fair point. However, I'm going to learn so much, from those amazing bowlers. Dale Steyn was coming back from his bicep injury at that particular time. You obviously have Fidel Edwards. He was just frightening to watch bowl, wasn't he? And unusual. And I was just wanted to watch it up close and find a way to talk to him. And then Kyle Abbott, who was such a fabulous bowler, wanted to do some work. So, they were brilliant. They both said, absolutely fine. That makes a lot of sense. You can go in and do the work. So to spend a couple of weeks with them, so I had training and matches with them, was just gold dust for me. Gold dust. Because at that particular time, you'd only work in the winter months, really, really on your coaching. The rest of the time was working, going around the counties, trying to identify and then pick players to play for England or put them onto different programs. So that was an opportunity to coach, and you know what? It's one of the best times I've ever had as a coach.
That's very cool.
Yeah, that's really good. I just want to go back to something you said earlier, because I know Pop lives and dies by this. Is he really does protect his bowlers? And you said about protecting your bowlers from batters in a sense, and in a jokey way, but how do you find, like from your coaching experience of trying to protect your bowlers from doesn't have to be batters, but other people getting in their heads and trying to get them to do stuff their way or whatnot? Have you found that yourself?
Yeah, so that would normally be, your head coaches, wouldn't it? Are your most powerful people, and they will have a view. There's very few fast bowling head coaches, very few. So and it's good that they've got a view. And once again, as I've got older and just listen to more people, I really love listening to different people's views, and I never go on the defensive. I always try and think, okay, why are they saying that? What's made them say that about the bowlers, either individually or as a bowling group? Because what happens, T20, you go for 200 2 or 3 times, which we've managed to do at the moment, and you look back at your initial time you watch it, you're thinking, oh God. But then you go, I'm going to watch this again, and you go through every single one. You go, that's actually not as bad as I thought it was. And then you start to break it down to the individual. Right, how did we do in the power play? How did we do in the accumulation? Then at the death, I thought, that's not bad. Do you know what? He's played really well there, and I think his thinking was absolutely right. He matched his intentions. It went into the cheap seats. I don't have a problem with that. And I know they've practiced really, really hard. As long as they've ticked all those boxes, I will fly into battle with them against whoever. I don't care. But if they've been slack behind the scenes, I'll have a word with them. And I've got to be honest with you, in my entire career as a coach, I've never had that. Because I think bowlers, they always do the right thing. They do. It just doesn't work for them sometimes, and that's okay. But we've got to try and do what it's not okay to keep doing that. We've got to find a way to make them better. So, when you have your head coach, I'm really lucky the head coach I've got, Peter Moore, a thoroughly good human being, so experienced, has seen so many different players. He does it in the right way. He might give players a little bit of a push and a prod, but he'll get me over. Shiny, come on over here. I want you to hear what I'm going to say here to whoever it is. And we have a listen. And once again, sometimes you might see the bowler's bottom lip hit the floor. But it always comes from a place of care and done in the right way. And I can then always have a conversation. Okay, so am I hearing this correctly? This is what you think he did. All right, I'm going to go back and have a little look at that just to be sure. Or X, what do you reckon? Has he got a point? And sometimes we go away and we say, we might have a point there. I think we might have to have a little look at that. And once again, I encourage my bowlers all to think outwards, not to think in. So, at the moment we've got Moses Enriquez playing for us in the T20. Once again, you get great people who come in. What's he been? He's been a gun captain. He's been a gun bowler, and he smashes bowlers out of the park. So when he's saying stuff about the bowling, and I had a great conversation with him yesterday, I'm all over it, because it comes from a great place. But you've also got the learning in there for everyone is brilliant. Now he's now speaking. I've said, look, please, this comes from such a good place. Go and talk to my bowlers. I'm not precious about them. I think what you're saying is brilliant. So go and spend time with Dylan Pennington, or Conor McCurr, because they're bowlers coming into T20, and it's a brutal game. Give them the value of your experience. And that's the bit I never want my bowlers to just go inside, go outside, talk about the fields, talk about those passages of play. When a batter's coming in, do you just stick to the same field, or do you say, no, I've got something different for you, pal? And those little nuggets are brilliant, because T20 is about the ball going into the cheap seat, right? So I actually believe that, this is the world of make it as hard with your thinking for that not to happen, rather than just what you do. So it's once again, it is that ability to, when we're talking about looking after, I do look after them. I will look after them, and I will protect them, but I won't protect them blindly. But once again, go back to the world of scrutiny they're in. Is even in county cricket we've got speed guns now, and we literally don't talk about the speed. We don't. We talk about how well they're bowling, and bowlers are inevitably curious. And let's go now to the bit that no one can explain. You'll get a speed gun reading. It's the very, very second the thing leaves the hand. But there are some bowlers who don't come up very fast on that, but the ball spits off the pitch, doesn't it?
Yes.
So it's just different. So Brett Hutton, for example, wouldn't come up very quick on a speed gun. And I said, Brett, don't sweat the speed gun. Honestly, this is what we've got to do is protect your absolute super strengths, which are bounce, movement, and you get a zip off the pitch. We've just got to know when those things aren't quite happening, we've got to go back over your action. And when I'm working with bowlers now, I build like optimal bandwidths for them, which we work together on, and that they've got some slush in there, because it's not the same. You can't be the same every day. And if we see it just start to drop, something's not quite right, we go back into it together and we look at those optimal bandwidths. Is it anything technically that we can go for? Or is it just you're having a little bit of a bad day, you're out of rhythm? But it's a really, really careful, considered approach. But we don't use the speed gun for that. We use the performance.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Brett, I think from what I recall of being told, Brett was quite quick, wasn't he, when he was younger, I think. But then he had an injury. And he's found his own way of being successful. And like you said, using his key things that work for him. I know he gets movement off the pitch and he good shape in the air. So it's good that he's managed to find his own way of being successful. And I'm sure he's got many years to come of doing the same thing.
Then he went to Northants, didn't he? Because he couldn't quite get into the Nott side. Went to Northants, did really well there. Then came back to us, and he was never really, really quick, but obviously really skillful, fantastic stats. But I would say the one thing that Brett, I mentioned it earlier, he's challenged me more as a coach than any other player, because he wants to squeeze everything out that he's got. So technically we would be working on stuff And he has an inner strength, which is I'll give things a go. And we've actually settled on, we just tried to make, once again, go back to the easy side of it. We've come back to, when he bowls at his best, he has a bandwidth, which we've got certain points that he stays within. And we're trying to protect his bounce, movement and accuracy. We're not on the pace thing. And we've just made it with those things that he can keep bowling for longer, because bowlers like that, if they can bowl for longer, their average and strike rates are unbelievable. So it makes total sense that the longer they can bowl for, the more wickets they're going to get. And that's sort of borne out over the last few years. Our aim for him has been to just make him as efficient as he can be, so he can bowl for as long as he can.
Yeah.
And, around that, we constantly look and make sure that he's as much inside that bandwidth as he can be. He likes to be tightly in it, not have the slush. He wants it tight. So for example, in the middle of a game, I might just put on MV play. He comes off at lunchtime. Brett, just have a little look, mate. I've just done a little still for you. He goes in, he has a look, and he's gone, yeah, okay, no problem. I'll put that right. And Brett, he's very, very matter of fact, very clear about what he wants. And boom, he goes out there, he'll turn around and I'll just go, yeah, perfect. It's a way of working that he's not bothered about doing it during the game. He's not worried about me saying, because we've got used to how each other works. Look, just look at that slot there. And he'll go, oh yeah, but it's got to be based on I'm seeing something that doesn't look quite right.
Yeah.
In the game. So he'll come off, he'll literally look at me, go, anything? Yeah, go and have a little look. Yeah, sometimes it's not, I'm not seeing anything. I think it might just be a rhythm day, mate. Hang on in there. You do have a lot of days you've got to hang on in there, don't you?
Most of them.
Exactly.
When you've talked about bandwidths a lot, is this typically a range of speed, or in, like you're saying in Brett's case, is it just bounce and movement, or?
No, so yeah, there'll be the outcome, but then there's a process to get that, isn't there? And even though I am, people call me a technical coach. I don't have a problem with that. I've spent a lot of time learning about technique, because I felt if I was lucky enough to be able to work with these amazing players who were looking to be England players, so they were looking to be the best, and they usually were the best, I had to make sure that I had as much understanding and information as I could possibly get, because I owed it to them that they trusted me to come in and work with them. So that's why I went down a certain route. And I also thought, with regards to, I was dealing with so many injuries at that time. I mentioned that 50%. So we had to first, and I'm looking at, in my really, really simple world of logic at that particular point, if I can't keep them fit, I can't coach them. Yeah, if they can't practice their game, they can't get any better. So that was the rationale behind me, first of all, really looking at why weren't we able to keep these guys on the park? And then we actually made some really good inroads into that from some brilliant work from a lot of specialists who were out there. But I was then pulling that in from Science and Med. I went to Science and Med and said, look, you guys, you've got some great stuff. Yeah, we need it, whether it's the strength side of it, whether it's the biomechanics at that particular point. And now I've moved much more towards the psychology side of it. That really interests me. But at that particular point, we wanted to keep them fit, and then we wanted to maximize what they had so they became better. So that was my rationale of the work I originally did. So the bandwidths then came from, there'd be moments in time that I'd look for. And, there were some certain patterns, having worked with hundreds of different bowlers, where actually there are some similarities, but there are some differences. And then you actually, with the bowlers, build their bandwidth. And they're right, this is when you're doing really well. What do you reckon? And they get, oh yeah, that's me. Right, should we just make sure that this is the bit we have that protects your game? So your game can never go below where it is. But it also gives us a marker for, is there anything else we can squeeze out of it that's meaningful, that will give you more wickets, make you move the pace, bounce, movement, control, all that sort of stuff. So, I've, once again, looking at bowlers and loving them all the way through, what I saw was a lot of bowlers were actually their performances were going down really, really quickly. And there was nothing in place to say, why is that happening? You know, why is a really, really important word, isn't it? So I would actually then work out with every bowler. I thought, I'm not going to let that happen to any of the bowlers on my watch. So I'm going to use the knowledge that I've been able to accrue with some brilliant people to actually put to them, look, here's your game when it's at its best. And these are the things that you do. You can't be there all the time, but it might be that we can say there's an acceptable bandwidth. And what we have found is anybody slides out of that bandwidth, they just have a little bit of a struggle. And we stick them back in. And that could be, and this is hopefully where the trust comes in, might be that it's Lyndon James. I say, Lyndon, mate, just have a little look at your final right into your jump gather. Yeah. Should we just do a tiny bit of work on that this morning? This is in a game. He goes, yeah, right. Comes out. We do 1 over on it. Oh, that feels better. Right. Brilliant. Off you go. In the match. Yeah. You're back on. But, you know, it's my job to help protect the game because it's tough as a bowler, isn't it? When you're in the white heated battle, and I'm really clear that's what I want, where I want them to be. And think of me as your eyes behind who's looking to protect you if you're just dropping out of your bandwidth. But it's not anything different that we're doing. We're just taking them back to where they hopefully feel great. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
That's a brilliant philosophy. I love the way you've sort of said you're kind of like the man in the shadows, the background, the eyes.
Yeah, that's it. I say to them, look, I'm your consultant. You're the CEO of Bowler Incorporated. Use all these amazing specialists you've got around you, whether it's S&C, physio, you know, and your bowling coach is exactly the same. My job as that consultant, you know, helping them to look after their game. Remember, we're incredibly privileged. Since 1986, lads, I've burgled a living. Yeah, not just as a player, but as a coach. I've been able to work in a game that we love and help people now as a coach to realise their dreams. I've got to make sure that I'm up to speed. I'm sharp every morning. Some people have said to me, oh, it must be really easy doing your job. I said, no. I said, I never think I've cracked it. I get out of bed every morning and I think, right, I've got to be on it here because someone's going to want to ask me something at some point. Someone might not feel that great at some point, and I've got to be there for them, and I've got to be on it. The minute I don't think like that, I know that I've lost it.
Don't know what's
Am I still here, lads? Have I got?
Yeah, no, you are. I don't know. Right, he just kind of started talking when you were still talking, so I don't know what happened to him. Chris, can you hear me? He's gone again.
He's gone, isn't he? He's gone.
Yeah.
You can hear me.
I can hear you. I can hear you, but I'm trying to let you. You're going to have to lead it a bit more because my connection's
right.
Being a bit shit.
That's fine. You've written down the time. I'm going to ask you. Right, we'll go on to another question. Actually, now, Shiny. I just wanted to know. Obviously, before I go into this question, actually, let's go back a step. You were obviously at Somerset as the head coach there, weren't you? And then what happened in that point? Somerset won the championship, didn't they? Then you had the opportunity to move on. How did that come about?
So I played. So I retired through injury in 1998. So my piriformis split. So a spooky thing. Made my debut at Lords in 1991. Bowled my last ball at Lords in, I think it was 1998. Just literally like I'd been sniped.
Oh.
So piriformis split, didn't play again. So I was 28, 29 years old. Peter Anderson, who was the CEO at Somerset, said, look, I know you enjoy your coaching because I'd done all of my original coaching badges all the way through. And he said, look, because we had Dermot Reeve, who was coach at the time, and Derm used to go off and do his Channel 4 stuff. And he said, look, we'd like you to be his assistant. So come on in and do that. So I did that for a year. Then Derm left and they made me head coach. I was a very, very young head coach. We then won the C&G, came second in the championship in 2001. So I was a very, very young coach as head coach. And then you go through your inevitable downturn. We got relegated in both, didn't do very well. So eventually you're asked to move on, but they didn't actually ask me to move on. they gave me a new role, which was basically I became, the academy director.
Yes.
So I got to do that for a year, but then Troy Troy was the national lead for fast bowling, who was brilliant to me all through my Somerset career as head coach. Troy would come down, show me the stuff that he'd done with the Aussie bowlers and was doing with obviously the new bowlers, and it was like a different world. So this will probably give you an idea as to where I then grew that curiosity around technique, process, and stuff like that. And Troy was just so far ahead. He took me to Chennai to spend some time with Dennis Lilly in the MRF Academy.
Yeah.
And I had 2 weeks out there with him and Dennis Lilly, which was the most amazing 2 weeks in my life. Dennis Lilly would be one of the heroes that I used to watch, running in like an absolute mammoth. But he was so far ahead of his time with regards to biomechanics. He had the first ever diagnosed stress fracture.
Right.
And it took them ages to find, and then looking at how he'd worked with biomechanics. And I went out there to Chennai for that 2 weeks, and he was showing me some of the drills that they did. The video work that they were using was unbelievable. You go, once all the bowlers are bowled, you then go to the MRF boardroom, and they put up all the screens, and he'd walk around with his cane, say, right, next victim, and we'd putting them up and talking about all the technique. And I'm just there going, I'm so light of knowledge here. And Troy was, the guy who, if you talk to Dennis thought that Troy was the best, the very, very best. And to be fair, he was. I still talk to Troy to this day. He's a great guy, brilliant mentor for me. And he set about improving my knowledge and helping me to do that. And then when he left, I applied for the role and got that role as national lead. So it was a brilliant grounding with Somerset, but then I had that opportunity to meet Troy, who then started to really pull out the curiosity I had in the specialism. But one thing I would say, that grounding as a young coach, and I was too young. I mean, I made some howling mistakes. I wasn't a trained coach at that particular time. I just started in 2000, the first level 4 pilot, which again was an amazing thing for me to do. A guy called Gordon Lord, who's the head of coach education, who once again there's someone I'm so grateful to for the opportunities he gave me and the people that he then allowed me to meet, which is, I know I'm going a little bit off tangent, but Dave Allred, who's Johnny Wilkinson's kicking coach, worked with Francesco Molinari, Luke Donald, could coach a close skill in any sport. Lordy gave me him as a mentor for 2 weeks every year. I mean, that Dave Allred is an amazing man who got me to think differently about the way I think, the way I talk, and the way I coach. So once again, the opportunities I had as a young coach coming out of Somerset, when I was literally flying by the seat of my pants, making every cock up there is, thinking I could do everything, to then being educated on this amazing level 4 program with amazing people, going out of the level 4 and still being given opportunity to work with people like Dave Allred. And Lordy would always say, got this person you might want to meet, this person you might want to talk to. And they just grew my bank of knowledge, and it never stopped. And even to this day, it never stops. I'm massively curious about everything that's going on. But I'm going to go back to the Somerset thing. When people say they've been given an opportunity to either head coach or a big coaching job, and they say it's just not the right time, I always say to them, well, when is the right time? Yeah. Go for it. If you think you're a little bit light on knowledge, go and learn while you're on the job, because you might never get that chance again to get that job. And whatever you do in it, even if it's a catastrophic experience, there'll be some amazing stuff that comes out of it. So one of my catastrophic experience, which turned into one of my best learners, was the Ashes 2006-7, where I was fast bowling coach. And remember, I single-handedly lost that Ashes series because Harmison bowled the first ball to second slip. And and I knew that was going to be a little bit of a problem, because have you ever been to Brisbane, the Gabba?
No.
So it's got a viewing room that's offset. Okay. And I thought, right, I would normally, so Troy said to me, when I was working with Troy, he said, like, I always sort of go down in the dungeons and I look at all the replays. So I'm a little bit, I can concentrate on the game rather than what's going on around it. And, you know, and an Ashes tour, especially after 2005, when they wanted blood, you know, so we've gone into the old Gabba on the first day. They wouldn't let us park underneath. They made us walk around the actual stadium. And honestly, it was full at that point. They wanted blood. It was like, whoa, this is going to be a bit hairy, lads. And, you know, you come out, you do your warm-ups and everybody's going. And then I thought, right, I've got to watch. It's the Ashes. I've got to watch the first ball live. So I've gone up and I'm stood there watching. It's an offset angle and Langer does his play leave, doesn't he? And it's gone straight to Fred. I thought he'd nicked it. And I looked round and the lads go, oh, no. And I looked at the replay and I thought, ooh, this could be a tricky time for me this way. You know, it was a five test matches. We got absolutely obliterated by an amazing team. You know, and I came back, you know, we then had the World Cup 2007 as well, which was a disaster for England, really. And I came back and I was literally, you know, when the old boxers out and the gum shields out, and I thought, I'm not really had a great time here in my new role. And Gordon Lord called me and he said, look, Shiny, I'd imagine you're absolutely beaten up at the moment, and you've got to get back on it here. We're going to learn from this. You know, and once again, he then put me on a little bit of a rehabilitation of my own sanity, that what I did, I can learn from. And, you know, so that's a sort of example of whenever you get an opportunity, you might not feel you're ready. You know, the first one was Somerset and I had some great experiences there and, you know, we had some success, but, you know, that first go, I learned so much from that. As a coach and a person and everything, and I think cricket, the way it is now, especially for players and coaches, is if you ever get an opportunity that you think it might be a tiny bit above you, get that out of your mind straight away and go and give it a go, as long as you learn from it.
Love it.
Yeah. So, well, this moves on to the next question. What have you found the difference of being at that international level? And then coming back to county, what do you find like the difference in standards or expectations, or do you have more hands-on with players now than you did before? What's that been like for yourself?
I'll tell you what, it has made me absolutely rise. I've always loved county cricket. So I was always going around the counties as a national lead. A couple of reasons. I wanted them to feel like I was really interested in them. Even if there were no bowlers of national interest in their counties, I would purposely always go to them as well. It made me realise how hard county cricket works. You know, it is a brilliant product for producing international cricketers, not just international cricketers, fantastic cricketers who enrich the game. Coming back into it has been an absolute privilege. And, you know, it was an absolute privilege working in international cricket. And I not only did the England fast bowling coach role, but I did that national lead where it's a bit different, where you're trying to pull people up. And our sort of aim there, Wrighty's gone again, isn't he?
Yeah. It's all right. Carry on, mate.
Our aim there was, you know, it was pretty blunt. It was find out if you're good enough for international cricket. But I never wanted it to just be that. So even if there were people that whoever thought they weren't good enough, I would then go back to their counties with them and be brutally honest. So look, this is what they are saying. You don't have to agree with it, but you know, what do you think? Is there anything we can move on for the next year? It might be that I could keep them in a pace program, or keep them. You know, if we saw improvements, it meant I could go and work with Pop. So, for example, I listened to the Wokesy one you did the other day, which was brilliant, by the way. And you know, Wokesy, England was saying at the time he did need a little bit of extra pace.
Yes.
So, you know, and Wokesy, we all know, such a wonderful lad and such a fantastic bowler. It was a hurdle for him being picked. So we were really honest with him, but it was myself and Pop doing that. So even though he'd come back out of a Lions or out of an England tour or whatever, we'd sit down and say, look, Wokesy, they're saying you need this extra bit of pace. We've got a decent bit of knowledge now on where you might get it. There might be a little bit of pain getting there, but do you think it's worth it? And good on Wokesy. He said, yeah, I'll give it a go. And Pop was magnificent, because remember, I have to get all around the country.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm very, very sensitive to counties, and I didn't want the ECB there all the time. You know, and as much as I was mates with all of these guys, I got it. I absolutely got it. And so I just keep in touch with Pop, and Pop would send me through the footage. Kev, it's starting to work. He's starting to get it. You know, so there was a really, really nice link between the two. And I was always, you know, very, very keen to make sure that link stayed. And going back to that question, Bart. So international cricket is full of masses of scrutiny. It's about push to see if they can be good enough to last at that highest level. But I think county cricket is the best. It's absolutely the best schooling for that. So the thing about getting them into the game and learning to bowl a lot, so that ultimately you get better, you get used to the rigors of what's going on. The cricketers out there are excellent. You know, ultimately, if you look at international cricketers and county cricketers, generally, unless I'm saying this, generally, those, you know, top international cricketers can do their bit for a little bit longer, can't they? Maybe bowling a little bit faster.
Yeah.
But actually, if you're looking at the package as a whole, the best county cricketers are as good as the best international cricketers. And sometimes it's just been right place, right time. You know, there's all those things to consider. You know, I've had, you know, guys who've been on, whether it's pace programs or we used to go on training camps to Poch, you know, who've had unbelievable county seasons, but they've never been able to get in because, firstly, Anderson and Broad are always taking up 2 spots. You know, the two best international bowlers we've ever had. So there's only ever been 1 spot up for grabs, really. So, you know, do the maths on that. It's bloody tough. And I'm totally convinced there are loads of bowlers, you two included, who would be good enough to play international cricket. Yeah. But you've never had that chance because you've never been in the right place at the right time. And
that's a lovely compliment to hear. That's for sure. Right, he's just sorting himself out, but he's smiling as well. Also, with that, talking about Welks, I don't think it helped. I think Ashley Giles was a selector at that point as well, so I think he wanted to keep hold of Welksy for a little bit longer.
Gilo was funny. I used to go along to, so I, you know, when we were looking at workloads and that sort of stuff, it was coming in. It was really good actually, because I use that quite a lot. But I've definitely customised it to suit county cricket, because the way you work with an international cricketer is different to county cricket, because you just go in for so much longer in county cricket. So I do it slightly differently. But we were starting to look at this, you know, the acute chronic workload stuff. And anyway, I'd go along to Gilo. They'd flag up the real bowlers of national interest. And Wokesy was always red as you like. We are going on a Monday morning and the physios would come to me and say, Woksy's properly red now. He's gone. I'll be like, okay, right. I've got to go down and have a difficult conversation with Ash. You know what Ash is like. He's a punchy person at the best of times, isn't he?
Yeah.
So I go down there and big Ash would walk in with his chest puffed out. Ash, don't puff your chest out at me. Come on, we've known each other for a while. I got to be honest with you, Ash. Wokesy's now into his 120th over of the week. do you think he's going to last? Well, Shiny, I've got a job to do. He's got, you know, it was a beautiful little, you know, that little Ash totally focused on what his county needed. You know, I'm now in there saying, you know, don't try not to snap him into a million pieces. We really like him. Yeah. And he's improving. Poor old Pop's in the middle, because I'm going to Pop, said, Pop, you got to help me out here. You know, it was all really, really
to make me laugh, because you think he got Welks, he's surely got to be ready now. He's doing almost like he's not quite ready yet. We've got, and then it'd be like, oh, look at the fixtures on 2 big games. Yeah, he's definitely playing for us. He's not going anywhere.
It was like the Jimmy Anderson when we were bringing Jimmy Anderson back from these stress fractures to try and get him onto that Ashes series. Mike Watkinson was his coach at the time. And we'd agreed. So we were doing the first ever bit of what they call a microcycle program. So I was learning to actually, try and do these workload type things where you wave them and build them and drop them and stuff to see if we could get Jimmy to stop stress fracturing. And anyway, so Mike Watkinson was brilliant. I said, look, Winker, can we do this approach? And I'd worked out the whole of his season. Can I send you this monthly? And then we, try and work it for him so we can, try and build up his resilience to bowling. But we wanted it in matches. That was the key, because Duncan Fletcher was desperate to have Jimmy for that tour. And so Winker, yeah, brilliant. First couple of months is going really nicely. Then I've resent the other one to him, the next one for June or whatever. And Winker's given me a message back, so shiny. Yeah, are you going to tell the committee that Jimmy can't play in the Roses matches, or am I? Because I'd taken this bit, not thinking about it, And once again, you realise how important county cricket is. So we went, gee, mate, honestly, I didn't even think about that. It's so important. So we actually rejigged it so that he could play, obviously in a really important match, which once again, Winker made a great point, which is the pressure would be good for Jimmy because, every game's full of pressure, but those ones were a little bit more full of pressure, weren't they? And, we manoeuvred it so that Jimmy got the right, the right stimulus from the game, but also, the county, quite rightly, he's their player. They get what they need as well. So going back to the original question, that link between international cricket and county cricket, I don't think there's much difference in class between the top performers. I genuinely don't. It is sometimes, a lot of times, right place, right time. But also, summarising it again, county cricket is an unbelievable tool for getting better and becoming an international cricketer.
Do you think, sorry, Ray, just one more question, but just you mentioning about workloads, and like you just said there, Jimmy, he's a Lancashire player at that time, so, you've got to consider that. How do you find it now? And I'll give the example of, we've had a young bowler, Sonny Baker, who's come onto the team doing quite well. And just almost as he's starting to get used to having to bowl fatigue and building that bowling workload and that bowling strength through playing county cricket, the ECB are able to go, actually, no, we want him to not play. And then he has a week off against Somerset, as the example. Then he has another week off, comes back, and he's just as he was getting bowling, he's out of sync. All of a sudden, he's feeling sore in certain areas, and he's not then got back to where he left. What do you think about that kind of stuff when players do get pulled out, just as they're starting to get the understanding of who they are and what type of bowl they are?
Yeah, he came and played against us when he'd had that week off.
Yeah.
And he was out of sync. There's no doubt about that. What would I do there? I'd pass the responsibility over to Pop, because Pop knows him the best. Pop's an unbelievable fast bowling coach with an unbelievable reputation, and I would feel safe sending any one of my bowlers to Pop. So if I was back in that role at the ECB, I'd say, Pop, I'm going to leave this to you. We're going to check in regularly. Yeah, we'll have proper conversations, but I'm going to trust you to manage Sonny Baker's development, because ultimately it's not, okay, you've got to keep him fit, but you've got to sometimes stick him in harm's way to get better.
Yeah.
And remember, all around that, Sonny Baker, the expectation around Sonny Baker is that he has to bowl at 95 mile an hour with big reversing things, and it's unrealistic. Let Pop educate him on how to bowl. I'm pretty sure that Pop would have weighed that up and gone, yeah, okay, Somerset is playing against his old county. What a brilliant way to, up the tempo on him pressure-wise. He's actually got a couple of really good games. I know Pop is really good with things like workloads. He watches all their technique. So I'd be weighing all that up and saying, do you know what? For this kid's development, he's the man to look after him. And that's that's a system for me that everyone would be happy. Most importantly, Sonny would be happy, because I'm pretty much guessing, and I saw it when he was there. Sonny really trusts Pop when he came to Trent Bridge. And you could see that there was a great working relationship. I actually had 10-minute conversation with Sonny. I went in and introduced myself because I wanted to find out a little bit about him, and he's brilliant to chat to. What sort of things you're working on, and he actually said, just feeling a little bit out of sync here, to be honest. He was honest. But it does happen. There was a brilliant article a long time ago in the Times by Glenn McGrath, who was playing regularly. He said that basically the biggest mistake he ever had was taking a big break from the game, because when he came back, he picked up loads of injuries because he'd stopped training, and also he'd stopped bowling. That was sort of summarising that, but it was an unbelievable article where he said, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to keep going. And once again, I'm a massive believer now. Remember that I would take I'm your consultant, you're the fast bowler. What do you want to get out of this? So, we've got Josh Tongue, obviously now, and, Josh has had a horrific time with injuries over the last couple of years. He's starting to come through beautifully now, doing really well. So you always have that little bit of a juggle between your county and your international. But I remember when we were trying to get back-to-back games in the Just, we'd say, how you doing, mate? He's gone, mate, I feel fantastic. That's the most important thing. You get to the end of a game. As coaches, you become pretty sensitive to your fast bowlers, don't you? I'd imagine Pop can look at you, Barks, and he knows when you're hanging by a thread.
Yeah.
And you being the bloke you are, you'll probably want to keep going. That's the time where I'd imagine Pop says, mate, how you doing?
Yeah.
And you two have got to be honest. Yeah. But I have that with a Brett. I'd have it with a Fletch, who I got to know over a long period of time. Now it'll be a Dylan, who I've started to work with a little bit more. And and I can say, how you going, big lad? I can. I'm not stupid. I can see when you're getting out of that chair. You're just you're not quite as quick as you normally are. And when you think I'm not looking, you might be. But we all know there's that. You then start to talk it through, don't you? What do you reckon? Just a little bit saucy, but I think I might have a little bit more. Then you're starting to bounce it backwards and forwards, knowing that your people who know you will be able to give you maybe a different way of looking at it. And I reckon 8 times out of 10, most of that time you're saying, let's go one more. Let's give it one more, and then we'll probably look to give you a rest.
Yeah. Because
it always comes back to, well, actually, I'm bowling really well. I might be feeling a little bit knackered, but I reckon I've got a little bit more in me. And I would say definitely, as a coach now, I'm much more keep them bowling than take them out. If they are absolutely goosed from the numbers that you've got, and you've got to take them out for a few, never take them out for more than 4 or 5 days, because they'll detrain technically and physically from bowling. You guys know that. It's just clunky, isn't it?
Yeah.
After you've been having a really long time, you're like, oh, where's my right leg? Oh my God, I'm not.
Yeah, it's so true. I can't go any longer than by day 4 of not bowling. I need to be bowling on that 4th day.
Incredible, isn't it?
I lose totally everything of what I've been used to.
And do you know what, Barks? That's a fast bowling thing, because as I said, for all those hundreds of bowlers that I've worked with, they would all say, Jesus, if I leave it for more than 4 or 5 days, I feel horrendous coming back. Even though I might have been able to get in the gym, I can actually get out of a chair without. It's something that you can't quantify, explicitly, because it's just a feel for bowling. Because remember, bowling is a really weird thing. You're running at 24, 25k. You then start to do some really weird stuff, which is based on being on one leg, one arm in the air, and then jumping, and then landing, and squatting, and pushing, and pulling, and then ripping this ball down. And by the way, you got to land it on a dinner plate and get it to move either way.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Well, and that happens so quickly, and all of a sudden you stop doing it. And it does. The machine doesn't work quite as quickly. You've just switched it off for a bit, And that's that beautiful balance that we have as coaches who know our bowlers. Go back to Pop and Sonny Baker. You know, Pop knows his bowlers, and he will be able to say, and I know if I want performance, I'd be respecting that and saying, do you know what, Pop, I'm going with you. The evidence you've suggested is absolutely spot on that this will benefit, you know, Sonny Baker. Let's face it, doesn't matter how fresh you are, doesn't matter how many, where you're at, there's a risk, you know, every time you bowl in a game, isn't there? Every time you bowl in a practice, more so in a game. So I say take that risk, you know, and I try to with Pete, if we've got either a guy coming back, you know, and it's touch and go, I'll try and give him some odds. Right, Pete, if you play him in this game, it's 50-50. That's a flip of a coin, mate. You know, if you're asking me, I wouldn't go for that. All right. If you get to 60-40, 70-30, remember, I reckon all bowlers start at 90-10 because you're never guaranteed, are you?
No.
Guaranteed. But, you know, there's that, and, you know, there's those intuitive odds based on the bowling coach who knows the bowler, you're listening, you're watching, have you got enough into him, you know, to make an educated guess. And we've had bowlers we put in at 60-40, yeah, because sometimes it's worth that risk. And the bowler wants to do it, but I'll be brutally honest with the bowler as well. I say, this is how I'm seeing it. This is where you're at. Yeah, you're a little bit light, but actually leading into it, you were really good. It's a different type of injury. So, you know, it's probably one that you'll be able to settle and go through. Because I've either had those injuries or I've rehabbed bowlers with those injuries. So you accrue a lot of knowledge. But I'm much more along the lines of we push them to play. Because otherwise you can spend so long coming back. You lose that, you know, it's tough enough to get back to match sharpness, isn't it? It's tough enough. You know, and if you're being told that you're not ready, what does your mind go? I'm not ready. So, you know, as soon as they start to be ready or looking like I'm saying, right, we are getting ready to be ready. And that's where you start to push them a little bit more.
Yeah.
Love it. Shiny, thanks so much, by the way, for putting up with my dodgy internet connection. I think it's all right for the minute.
I heard you're in a crypt at the moment. You've gone from your penthouse down to the crypt.
Well, yeah. We sorted like my basement out, but yeah, apparently this morning it's been a bit all over the gaff. And I'm aware here that I've probably missed a little bit of the conversation, but I'd love your thoughts on strength and conditioning. Because I know you're big on having bowlers be robust and as fit as they can be, but obviously you're not an S&C, but you are, you know, you're an elite bowling coach. What's your thoughts on that area?
Yeah, so there was a paper came out not very long ago that I was actually a co-author on, which it was brilliant. It was a Paul Felton, a guy who I've worked with. He actually did the second PhD that I paid for at the ECB, which was around simulation modelling. Okay, now he basically did a brilliant piece of work which says, so just I'm really summarising it, probably not very well, but basically it's as you get stronger, your action can become suboptimal, right? And basically what's happening there is that, especially if someone's going through a growth spot or they're quite weak and then they're starting to train, your body's a great piece of kit. Your body and your brain's a great piece of kit. If you're told to bowl fast with it, it will find a way to bowl fast, but it might not be optimal. So what I've started to do with that, because I'm really curious about strength, and I'll go back to the other parts in a minute, is what I use that for, which is brilliant, is when someone is in a proper program. So we get a new young bowler come in, or we've got academy guys who are now starting to push up. That for me is my time to be really cool on or hot on the bandwidth stuff. So as they're getting stronger, I will use that extra strength that they're building to make sure that they know what they're using it for. Remember, it's not to bowl faster. And I know your Instagram coaches aren't going to like that. It's to be better, right? And once again, I go back to with experience. If you're coaching them to really grease that technical groove, they will do the rest with bowling fast. They will do it. But what they've also do is they've got fantastic skills and they can bowl a little bit longer because they've learned to control and bowl within an effort bandwidth. Without trying to run in and be a lunatic the whole time, headbutt the floor or whatever they do when they try and bowl as quick as they can. It's about, for me, using that strength to hold them into brilliant position. So let's go back to that. Didn't stumble on it, but we used to do a pace program. We take them out to Potchefstroom. Brilliant place where all the athletes used to go and train. And I mean, these guys are amazing. So we'd specifically go into the gyms at the time the athletes were training, and you'd see these shot putters, javelin, 200-meter runners, amazing. Right, so I can see you smile. I don't know if you've been there, mate. It's an amazing place.
Yeah, no, I have. Yeah.
And anyway, what we were finding was, because of the times of the training, I'd then have to fit in a technical session afterwards. So they'd come after doing a big block in there. And what we were finding was it was so easy to do their work. They were lit up, so they were primed to be able to do, whatever technical work you were working on. Mm-hmm. And, it was really weird. I'd sit there so I'd take an Al Richardson, a Matt Mason, or a Killer, or Jason Kerr, younger Pop, these coaches who you'd be taking out and giving them experience. And we'd say, look at this is unbelievable. They're doing it. And you talk to them, they say, well, it just feels so easy. So we got to that point where you've got the priming situation, your central nervous system's ready to go, but also you're getting stronger in that block as well. Go back to that paper we've just written. If you're working with it, their own individual parameters, it's much easier because they're stronger in the positions. You're absolutely telling them what to do, as in, we want you to do this because you've got to be able to bowl the ball. We started to change all of those, the way we work with them. So if they went at Loughborough in the Loughborough block, and they did a power-based session, the big power-based session at Loughborough Uni, straight after their big lift, and that might be at 6 o'clock at night, we take them into the centre and they bowl a couple of overs. Because what you're doing is you're then telling your body, your brain, your nervous system, you've just lifted to be able to bowl, not to lift. And all of a sudden, their techniques, and I'd just be watching them, just remember your points you're working on, and bang, bang, bang. And they actually used to love that, because it was as if, the strength had lit them up, and they were able to then tell the body and the brain why they had done that. So it was a way that I was learning that strength, not only would it protect you, but it could make you technically a lot better. So, I absolutely believe in strength, but where I've gone with it is I believe there are exercise, and everyone's a little bit different, where it's your bang for your buck. And I always say to strength and conditioning coaches, look, if you only had 3 exercises you could do for your bowler, what would they be for that particular bowler? And the reason why I say that is I don't want them doing an hour and a half in the gym, because they'll totally lose interest in it. Right? I'm a believer that even if you've only got 10 minutes, give them a program, because playing is bloody hard, isn't it? It's unbelievably hard when you're in the middle of a county season. Don't expect them to go and do, at the end of the 4-day game, go and do an hour and a half session in the gym. Be creative with it. Just do, all right, I'm just going to pick some exercises. Just going to do your squat on one day. Done. 15 minutes out of there. Just do your 3s. You've got your warm-ups to it. Do your 3s. Boom, you're gone. Next day, do your weighted chins. Boom, you're out of it. So all of a sudden, they know it's 15 minutes. I'm writing my insurance check. I'm keeping my body lit up to be technically good. And all you're doing is you're doing your microdosing, which, once again, we were doing that. My take on that was from ages ago. And then I read all the stuff on microdosing. It's a really, really effective way to train. So in the off season, you can fit in your long program, but even then I'm slightly reticent to say, I'd love to see an hour and a half program. 40 minutes max. You should be able to get in a really good program. I still train every day. I'm an old geezer. One of the reasons why I train every day, I want to be a good role model to my players. So I'll get up at 5 o'clock pretty much. I've got a gym in the garage, and I'll go and do my stuff, go to the ground. The lads know I train as well. So when I'm saying, come on, lads, you've got to write this insurance check in there. They know that I'm doing it as well. I wouldn't ask them to do something I'm not doing. But every time I do it, I'm not being stupid, but I feel great. I feel really, really good. So, I know there's lots out there on strength and conditioning. I wish I'd have been able to do it properly when I played, because I had catastrophic injuries. And when I look back at them now, I know, I didn't train properly. We didn't know how to train back in the 80s and 90s. You just, one year you'd go and run 10 miles a day every day. The next time you train like a bodybuilder, and probably somewhere in the middle would be pretty good. I'm a massive believer in running. I am. Longer runs, longer low level runs, because if I go for a decent run, and this comes from the Watt Bike. So basically the inventor of Watt Bike and the concept too, a guy called Ian Wilson. It's based in Nottingham. So Pete Moores met him and said, "Oh, Shiny, this guy, you might interest you." I thought, wow, yeah. I read about him. He was the marginal gains guy who went and did all the stuff for cycling. So I took the S&C there, and we met this guy. It was an unbelievable hour where we showed him what our guys did for training, and he said, "Where's your zone 2 stuff?" Zone 2 is quite a buzzword now, but this was way before that was coming out. And we said, "What do you mean zone 2?" He said, "Really low level." He said, "Oh no, the S&C was then saying, no, we know from cricket, from the GPS, etc., that it's all high level, up and down." And I'm going, but I've never got that. I've always had rucks with every S&C to say running is so important, because actually you think so you're running in at 24k then down, but then you're spending a whole day in the dirt. And I know, from old style, you've got to look at what happened in past history. Richard Hadley used to run. Dennis Lilly, run. Malcolm Usher, he used to run, because that's the sort of thing you did. And they bowled gazillions of overs, absolutely gazillions. But it was that low level zone 2 where, Ian Wilson would say, well, actually, Adam Peaty, the swimmer, he would swim for 4 or 5 hours a day in his training. His race is over in a couple of minutes. But it was that low level protection. So we actually started to add quite a bit more zone 2 stuff in, and we found our injury rate started to drop. But what I also did is I sort of went with the concept of zone 2 bowling. So we would then just go and bowl at a lower level, greasing the groove again, the nice technique for an hour, especially when we're doing the transition from T20 back into 4-day cricket, or 50 overs back into that last block. And we just go, and the lads actually quite liked it because it was really chilled, super chilled, rocking, swinging, but we just keep them going for an hour, not all the time, at chosen points. And they actually said, well, it doesn't feel hard. We then knew from the injuries that we weren't getting them, because we were adding the concept of zone 2 into bowling as well. And, I'm much more get them bowling, because you're playing with the game and learning all your skills, and you have great conversations about it. But also there was a little bit of science that backed it up through this amazing bloke at Concept 2 who'd worked with the best athletes in the world in trying to get them to maximize their performance and stay really robust. So, once again, there's so much out there that, if you get creative as a coach, this is why I always say, if you get an opportunity to ever go and meet someone who knows a hell of a lot more than you, blimey, go and do it, because it's so worth doing. Because if you're, as a coach, you're saying, well, can I incorporate that usefully? And when I was thinking, I can actually, because I can get the boys to bowl more, which means they're learning a little bit more, and they're all talking about what they're doing, and you give them nice swingy balls to go with, and and it's just an hour of fun.
I love the idea of that. To be fair, you're saying a lot of stuff here that I think Nick, to be totally honest.
You know the CASE acronym, don't you? Which we all do. Copy and steal everything.
No.
mate, I've done it all my life.
Yeah.
So,
I think
what bike guy?
Yeah, that's amazing. with the zone 2 conditioning as well, I feel like all it is in my whole career has been tempos.
That's it.
And
That's
it's like
tempo bowling.
But actually, you do what, 40k in a game, 30 to 40k. You're not sprinting.
No.
Well, you're not sprinting for more than 5% of that, are you? I wouldn't.
No.
It's all.
And once again, it's a mindset, isn't it? As a bowler as well, you come off at the end of the day. You know that you come off at the end of the day. I can still remember it, even though I'm very old. I'd look down at my Masons. I didn't have decent bowling, but I had the old Masons I had to go and get done. And I think, I can't reach my laces to undo them. So I'd have to go to Simon Ecclestone, who said, Eccles, will you undo my laces for me, mate? And it was just that amazing. It was an amazing feeling because your body was humming. Yeah, but you'd sort of lost that, the freshness you had at the start of the day or the start of the week or the start of the season. And I know when I go out and do my zone 2 runs now, because I train in quite a sort of data driven way because I like to, I'm getting older and I want to go, but I'm just curious about that stuff because I know it keeps me interested in working with my bowlers. But I come back off of a low level run where I'm keeping my heart rate in zone 2. And I bend down to try and pick up the key at the end of the run. And I'm like, oh my God, that's like bowling. But I know if I go down and I do my 8 30-second sprints and then I come back home, I can get it easily. Yeah. So yes, it's a different system that will help me, but don't throw out the system that I know hurts me more than anything that will help me stay, better for what I've got to do in the game, which funnily enough lasts six hours during the day. And then I might get 3 days off and I've got to come back and do it again. So I'm sort of working me being the curious bloke where I work out the logic and remember what it was like and what it felt like. And remember, we'll just want to not, as much as we can, not feel like that so we can still perform really, really well. You're just trying to get those little bits that will help them moving forward.
That's amazing. That is really, really, really good stuff for anyone to take on board. I've got one more question for you. What key things would you look for in a young bowler that you saw their attributes and thought, that's something that we can work with and really help and progress quite well?
Well, this is the old crystal ball stuff, this, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? I do use like a profiling tool. So I've been lucky enough to work with a really good company based out of Loughborough Uni, where they tried to rip everything out of my head and Paul Felton's head. So the biomechanist. So we worked together so much to look at what we would use technically, and we've ripped that out of our heads and we've put it into an app. And I now just have to take 2 bits of footage, and then literally a day later, it comes back to me as a full profile of that bowler. And it's basically, it's everything that I've got in my head that used to take me. If I had a new bowler that I was looking at, I then, and this is technical to start with, so I'll sort of go to the other bit in a bit. But I would usually come back and have to spend, probably a good hour or 2 doing the profile and mix it and then trying to score it. So I was seeing how it would be in a league table against other guys, because and now we've got this piece of kit that literally I take 2 bits of footage, it uploads, and then it comes back to me. It's then tagged by a master student at Loughborough, and it comes back. And the beautiful thing is I can't influence it once it goes in.
Oh, okay.
So it's really, it's a cool piece of kit because it gamifies it and scores it. And then it also shows me some areas where I could potentially work. So I would do that, but also the looking at things I use. And once again, this was a beautiful, a really lovely piece of advice from Dave Allred, who told me to read a book called Blink, which is by a bloke called Malcolm Gladwell, which it's basically the power of gut feeling. And there was one little piece in there, and how effective it is there's one piece that says, just when you see something for the first time, give it a word. So it might be strong. Ooh, it looks strong. And then you start to what they call thin slice it. And you say, well, why have I said that? So, and you're using all your experience you've ever had through watching people bowl, where you're thinking, well, he looks a little bit like X, who actually turned in to be bloody good. So now I'll get a little bit of footage of him and I'll see if, maybe we can take it. Then you get curious about it and you go and ask that you start talking to that guy. So that was one of the things I used to do in my role at Loughborough was I'd go and watch a bowler. So someone would get flagged up. So let's say Graham Onions, for example, when he was coming onto the scene. You don't forget a name like that, do you, when he's bowling? I'd heard he bowled lots of bumpers and stuff. Yeah. And he was good. So I started to go and watch him quite a bit. And then I'd call. So first of all, I watch from afar to just see what they are and see how they operate. And I thought, oh, wow, Jesus Christ, he's nasty. He was a nasty bowler, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
When he bowled.
Abused us plenty, probably.
No, nasty for me is I think is a bit of a dying word to use now because, a lot of bowlers are just quite nice, aren't they? They look nice. Where's all the bumpers? Where's a little bit of, I know you get points for it now, but which is ridiculous, by the way. But I thought, that's real. Why have I said that? Then I started to watch him a little bit more and I thought, this bloke's hard work. The batters don't like facing him. And then I go and talk to some of the batters. Tell me about Graham Onion. Yeah, he's hard work. He's at you the whole time, chips away at you as well. He makes you feel uncomfortable. Then I phoned Jeff Cook up, great guy. Cookie, can I come and have a chat with him? And I went and had a chat with him. First time, I couldn't believe it. I honestly thought I was talking to the wrong bloke because he's just the nicest bloke in the world off the pitch, isn't he? And I'm like, have I got the right bloke? But then we actually started to bring him in and you thought to yourself, wow, but it was such a powerful thing that first time you see someone, work out why you think what you think. And then you use your experiences and because I've grown sort of different tools to be able to help me, make a decision because let's face it, when you bring people onto a staff now, whether it's recruitment from other counties or whether it's someone new who you see through, a minor county route or something like that, which is rare nowadays, but they are out there. We got a young lad, Rob Lord, who came through like that. You're actually, you're using a little bit of what you'd called experience and proven stuff to say, well, he's worth taking a punt. Let's give him a couple of years to see when we put in a little bit of strength and conditioning into him, a little bit of learn the game, a little bit of Chris Marshall, our psychologist, who's an absolute jet. He is brilliant, helping him to, put up with the rigors, the mental rigors of professional cricket. Let's see if we can really make that ramp go up nicely for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That bit of software that you've talked about. I don't know if you're happy, but is there someone that has almost got the perfect score that people might know, or is it?
No. So you get. It's called Pace Flow. It's out there. It's honestly. Let me show you. I'll show you how it. I'll just show you the gamified side of it. So.
Yeah.
Because this is what I wanted it to be, and it's not. We don't tell you how to coach on it. What you can see is there. I've got all of my bowlers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see all of the Knox bowlers. I'm going to try and cover up the name, which will be a bit tricky.
No, to be fair, you can't see that closely anyway on the camera.
Okay, good stuff. Well, what you can see back there is, can you see the score or the let me just see if I go there. Can you see any name? There's no name, which is good. That's good. Okay, so you can't see a name. Perfect. So what you've got there.
Yeah.
See those different phases?
Yes, yeah.
And you can see how
different colours and things. Yeah.
The red, amber, green. So on that one, you've got overall, which is everything. You've got legality. So obviously, I want to make sure they don't chuck it.
That's an important one, yeah.
That's an important one. That's done through Loughborough Uni. And then performance is all of bowling. So the bowling is the last three down there where you see run up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've got preparation and delivery.
Wow.
So that's within that then, okay. And you can see there's a score in there.
Yeah.
Okay. So actually, if you drill down into it, let me see. So I'm really pleased with this one. I'm just going to cover up the name.
Yeah, sure.
Because this one, we got to 100%.
Wow.
And this is the lad that wanted. This lad said to me when he came here, he said, when I get my run up right and it's balanced and it feels everything is perfect. I said, brilliant. That's all we're going to work on. And you can see some of the stuff that we do. So I'll show you a little bit. When we tag it, we're tagging every foot strike.
Wow.
You see that? And every alignment. So this is all just from 2 pieces of footage. And then you also get, there's the profile. You see where it's all green?
Yeah.
I don't need to touch that now. All I need to do is maintain it. So every 8 weeks, and if I go to preparation, all right, you start to get me, just cover up the name again.
Yeah.
See this one? You're starting to get an idea of how we measure stuff, because you get stills and there's lots of areas in there. And you see where it's green and amber?
Yes.
Or green and yellow. So the yellows I look at, and that's areas that we can do some work on.
Right.
Okay. And if you look up there as well, so preparation, you see this lad is just in the green, and you see the score next to it.
Yeah.
So because they're all moments in time in this sort of algorithm that we've built from all the technique and all the people that we work with, the moments in time, they will never, the position never changes. So it's totally objective, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
And what we don't do, so if you're using this as a bowling coach, we don't say to you how to coach. We say, this is where your player is. You then, as the coach, hopefully, you're a coach and you know what you're doing. You say, do you know what? I know my player better than you do. Okay, because we're just saying that's where your player is. I don't know how he learns or goes about his business. Okay, well, that's where you are. There's a couple of areas where you might be able to get a real bang for your buck. So you then go and coach it after 4 to 6 weeks or whenever. Take your 2 stills, back it comes. See where your score is. See if it's on the slider. See if it's slid more into the green.
That's insane. So did you develop this software?
So with Loughborough University. So cut a long story short, all the stuff that I'd learned through the PhDs that I'd funded, through the coaching that I did, I'm a good record keeper. I keep all my stuff.
Yeah.
And I used to do versions of this that I'd used to come in and have to, at night, being the badger I am, I'd sit there and I'd look at it and I'd go back to the player the next day and say, I think we could do a little bit of this. What do you reckon? But what we did is we wanted to take that out of my head and out of Paul Felton's head. So we basically put the algorithm together, which was we wanted it to be super simple, because what's the commodity that coaches don't have a lot of is time.
Sure.
So I wanted to be able to go 1 bit of footage from the rear, which you saw from the run up where we do all the foot strike, then side footage, so slightly different speeds and panning on them. And then the next day I get it back with that beautiful profile with the scores on the sliders, and I can go, yep. Okay, there's your bang for your buck. I take it back to the player, say, look, here you go. This is what we've done. What do you reckon? And then we go into the coaching, and then 6 weeks later, take them. So this is what I'm doing. I'm now at the time now doing T20 when I can get some, because the guys will recover a bit, don't they?
Yeah.
So I'm taking my bits of footage now that I put against the start of the season, and they're coming back in, and I'm seeing what the scores are. Don't want the scores to go down. They can stay the same, but they mustn't go down. And if anything, if they go up, absolutely fantastic. But once again, it's a thing to protect the game and then to see if you can improve going forward. Totally sort of objective, based off a lot of coaching, some good science in there, but also the craft.
That's very cool. And that's called Pace Flow, you say?
Yeah.
I have to check that out. That looks unbelievable, to be fair.
It's an interesting, mate, bloody useful for me because it saves me a lot of time and I trust it. But once again, it's not telling you how to coach as a coach. It's just saying that's where your player is. And then you've got some simple recommendations if you want to use them. And we've purposely made the recommendations a little bit there's some biomechanics in it. And the reason for that is I want to encourage coaches to have a breadth and a depth of knowledge. So, I want to find out a little bit about biomechanics for cricket that's worked. So it's very specific to cricket.
Yeah.
And if you think about the sort of data that's come from the sort of parameters we've got, that's from when I started work at the ECB in 2006. So that was Hoggard, Harmison, Jones, Flintoff, through to pretty much now. And every bowler who's come through, and we do the Vicon stuff where we stick all the things on them. Did you have that done, Wrighty?
Oh, no, I didn't actually, no.
We used that, but then also how we've coached it. So it's the how we've coached it to move it on that will have worked, hopefully. So, there's a lot of case studies behind it, not just, I'm going to have a guess here, but it's also players that are successful in county and or international cricket. So, it's based on some pretty sound sort of evidence in there as well.
Yeah, that's amazing, to be honest. How long before you have to be in Shiny? Because I'm aware we've had you for an hour and 45 minutes so far.
No, I loved it. No, I've got Stoney at 2:30. I'm going to be revving the lad up and and bringing him into bowl at 2:30. So no, I'm happy. Honestly, this is a dream for me. I've loved, as I keep going back, I loved your podcast. I learn all the way through. When you just learn. I love the fact when you bring on the young pros, because they see the game differently.
Yeah.
And as a coach, I've got to make sure that I'm still on their bandwidth.
No, absolutely. Okay, well, if you're happy to, then I've got a couple more questions. We might have to chop this in half and make it a two-parter. Technically and biomechanics wise, do you have any hard and fast rules? And there's a few things you hear a lot about right now. So I know, and you've touched on the brace front leg. One that's getting talked about a lot now is being quick off your back foot. But Keith and I have done a little bit of coaching with some bowlers who are they're too quick off their back foot, that their upper bodies aren't working at all.
Basically they're off the back foot before their arms are even in sync, and they're bowling off one leg pretty much.
So there's the legs, there's the upper body, they're in that position at back.
Almost
rather
like
than an old styly that position.
Yeah, where the back knee's almost coming past the front leg.
Yeah.
But they've also been working with coaches that are about being fast and bowling fast and trying to be quick off that back foot. That's basically what Wrighty's trying to say.
I never coach in isolation. I don't pick one thing to coach. I would coach more of a bigger picture. And if I could say my what I'm trying to do is buy every single bowler some time, because look, don't tell anyone, lads, but think fast to bowl, think slow to bowl fast. Let's not tell anyone, but those times when you have those great days. Once you're a bowler, you can always remember it. And I know the fastest spells I ever bowled, it was all so quiet. It felt so sort of just beautifully slow and in time. It didn't feel quick. Mm-hmm. Didn't feel like I had to grunt it. It just felt wonderful. And once again, I go back to why I ask a lot of questions about it. Why did it feel like that? And funnily enough, when you look at the best bowlers around, they can hold on to the ball for longer. Put simply, they hold on to the ball for longer. Now, there's a number of different things that happen around that. And I'll give you a little clue into, I would try to coach efficiency, flow, and ease. And that then means to me, I'm asking the bowler, ultimately, does that feel easier? Yeah, that feels easier. I am still, so in my own mind, I am thinking of the technique of it, but I don't talk to the bowlers about that now. I don't. That's for me, because I'm trying to understand what's underpinning them feeling more efficient, more flow, or ease. And that's the language that I'm using to them. And when they start coming back to me within it, and you've got an idea, when I showed you that pace rate, there's a 31-point algorithm we use for it. I don't tell them that because I know the first thing that's going to do is completely mess them up. So I'm putting the science that's gone into it and the craft. And craft is more important to me because remember, I always hold on to the fact that this is a game of at release, can I get that ball? That my intention is to get that ball to land on a dinner plate, to move left or right, either in the air or off the pitch, and be unbelievably accurate. So everything I do, so the what, has to go to the why. Then the how is the bit where I'm trying to work it out. And I'm trying to work it out where I know, because I've made mistakes, absolutely made mistakes as a bowling coach coming through, right? And I know that some of my hows have literally blown people apart. But I've owned those, and I would still own them now. But luckily, they're getting less. They don't go because you've got to take a risk. If you're absolutely passionate about performance and getting better, you've got to take a little bit of a risk, whether it's a coach or a player. Because remember, players are in there to get better, and they want to know if you can get them better. But what I always encourage, you've just heard it there. What I always encourage is the what, the why, the how. So what are we going to do? Why? So that's where I'm saying, well, the reason why we're going to do it, you might get 5 miles an hour quicker. Your average speed might go up by 3 or 4 miles an hour, which then allow you to access a quicker ball if you need it for your bumper. Why? It might make you safer. Why? It might allow you to bowl for longer for less cost. It might give you a better away swinger. It might bring you 2 or 3 inches more height on release. Bounce. Go back to your questions about bounce, or was the one bouncer. Bounce amplifies everything, doesn't it? If you get the ball to bounce, it looks like you're bowling at a gazillion miles an hour because bounce is so hard to play. So once again, when you go into the why, and I encourage all my players to always ask, why are you saying that, Shiny? Not just the what, why? Well, I reckon, and if I can't articulate that it's around improvement, you shouldn't be listening to me. And also, I shouldn't be saying it in the first place. Then as a coach, if they I quite fancy a bit of that, then it's the how. And that's where you go into your experiences, your creativity, where you're trying to make it as relevant to the game as possible. I have gone away from big poles, hurdles, all that. I've gone away from that sort of stuff, much more into sort of metaphor type coaching. So because if you think you can take, consciously you can take 3 pieces of information and do it, and you should be able to do that. Once again, if you're coaching in isolation, which I don't like doing, front arm, back leg, whatever. But if I can give you a principle, for feel, then that's the bit where you've got thousands of things that you're doing in your own head, and it's just bloody easy. You don't know how it's happening, but it's happening. And that's why I use a phrase, which once again, through working with someone amazing like Dave Allred, where we actually sort of coin this phrase, technique produces. Your technical work will produce a skill. Feel reproduces it every time in a way that is amazing in a game. So technique produces, feel reproduces. Your technical work is important, but your feel work is more important. So I go through that sequence when I'm helping a bowler to understand the what and the why. We're going through in the how, I'm helping them to understand it so they can get to the feel. Now, when they say it feels easy, I know we're onto something. So it might be something that I can't spot technically, but if they're feeling it, it's then more of a timing thing, isn't it? In between each sequence of bowling, there's a time that you take to get there. And that's why you see I do moments in time, because I've got a better chance of seeing it and be able to build a bandwidth to protect the bowler's game and then move it on if we can. But I'm listening much more than watching at that particular point. So I'm listening to what feedback the bowler's given me. Okay, that's good. Might not show up anything there, but something's going right there internally for them. I don't have to be a coach that wants to see something brilliant on a screen so we can all give ourselves a pat on the back. Yeah, I want to know that they are feeling what we're doing is beneficial. Do you know, it feels like it's coming, it's fizzing off my fingers. Oh yeah, it actually looks like it's fizzing through to the keeper now, doesn't it? If you notice your lines, geez, you haven't left that line at the moment. So something's working in the timing and or the alignment that's really helping you out. So, it's once again finding the ways to short circuit all the clunky stuff so it becomes beautiful feel that the bowler owns.
There's some absolute knowledge bombs being dropped here. This is an amazing episode. I did want to ask you if you could build a perfect bowler, but that feels a bit, you know what I mean. You're giving some amazing knowledge, and it feels a bit gimmicky. But maybe you could entertain us with who how you might construct the perfect bowler and what bowlers in world cricket at the moment you take bits from.
Ooh. So firstly, I mean, I'm not. It might sound like I'm sitting on the fence here. There are so many bowlers out there, be it the youngest lad you might be working on in the staff to the most experienced, international player. Yeah, they'll all do something at some times that just makes you go, wow, look at that. That's amazing. And honestly, the way I work as a coach now, I don't seek out, the top-notch UBU fast bowler to work with. I seek out everyone. I don't care, even if it's someone who comes up to me and says, Shiny, I want to have a little go. Can we just have a little go? Because everyone fancies a little go, don't they? And you can find some really useful little bowlers. We've got, so at the moment, a lad called Ben Martindale on our staff.
Yeah,
he's a left-handed batter, aggressive batter. That kid can bowl. And
I've never seen him bowl. Yeah,
mate, we are slow, just slowly doing, not pressure on him because he's a batter. He has to spend a lot of time, but he comes over and he'll just have a little bowl. He's a really talented little player, and he bowls some stuff where you think, wow. My take on, I don't want to build the perfect bowler. I want to build every bowler into the best that they can be. And I know that's a little bit sort of philosophical, maybe a sort of little bit bubblegum in the world of that sort of flowers and that. It's about, once again, any bowler that lets me in, that lets me go and work with them. I see it as an absolute privilege, whether it's the best in the world or someone just starting out and having a go, because I have to work hard at that particular point to get myself better. And I have to work in a place where it's not, I've got my template that works for me. Now, I might have a couple of principles that I work to, and I think I've given you them: efficiency, flow, and ease, right? Yeah. It's changed. That has changed massively from 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And I would say coming back into county cricket has accelerated that through. And that's why, working back in county cricket, I think has made me a miles better fast bowling coach than I was when I worked in international cricket. It was a different animal that I was dealing with there. And that's why I've got so much respect for county cricket and the people who play it, because it's an unbelievable opportunity to get better, but it is hard. There's no doubt about that. It's hard. And, let's not get away from that fact. You've got to be honest about that. But there are also some brilliant people, Pop, Jono, Mace, to Richo, to just name a few, who know their stuff, and can help you just become the best that you can possibly be. And then have a look at, all the other specialists that you have working around it. And then your mates, the blokes that you're bowling with. Listen to them. I love it when a Brett starts talking to a young James Hayes, on our staff, because that is gold dust. Remember, they're out there doing it. I'm not doing it anymore. I can relive it a little bit, but it's not as sharp as it used to be. And when I listen to a Brett Hutton talking to a James Hayes or a Dylan Pennington, I know that what's coming there is so much experience, and just so much gold nuggets that they would get being out at the coalface. So I've probably disappointed you a bit there.
No, not at all.
Because I genuinely don't think there is the perfect bowling template. I probably did think that 15 years, 20 years ago. I reckon I can bowl a bloke who can bowl at 100 miles an hour. No, I couldn't. I couldn't. Yeah. It was impossible. But do you know what? When I changed my thinking to, I reckon I can help you improve. Yeah, I reckon I can make you a better bowler, and you open back up to what fast bowling is about. It is a blend of art and science and craft. Yeah, and we as coaches have got to open up the players to see it like that as well. So, I get. Would I say I'm slightly concerned if can you just make me quicker? My answer to that is, how about I try and make you better or help you get better.
That's pretty much. Do you know what? That's pretty much our mantra for our bowling that we do. We're sick and tired of it just being about one specific thing. We're like, how's about just wanting to be better bowlers? Like, that's what we want to do. That's what we want to help people become better bowlers who understand bowling, understand themselves, how they bowl, their actions, everything, rather than just one thing, whether it's pace or whatever. That's only one part of bowling. There's a massive big picture of bowling itself, which people don't seem to tap into.
Yeah. You asked me earlier about the, nick off, and why. Because I still have that amazing picture in my mind of the noise, At that point, I'm not thinking, don't drop it. We had plenty drop. But when I see, one of our young bowlers come in and they do the same thing, I still get that same when the ball's on its way and you see it going through. You're just like, and that for me is the love of bowling. You've outskilled the batter, to that point where they've played it, they've nicked it, or you've set up for that one. I'm always going, not the wobble, the in swinger. Yeah. And look at that, beautiful.
I thought I'd show this one.
Yeah, boy, those are the days. Little gold tint in there. Yeah, cheeky little look. Hampshire days. Love it.
For those who are listening, Chris has just put up a little picture of a younger Kevin Shine back in his day.
Oh, yeah, with the original mullet, lads.
I thought it was Mark Nicholas.
Mark Nicholas inspired. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Now, there was a guy I used to, I used to terrify him in the net, but he helped me become a much better bowler through being really honest with me. If there are any young bowlers out there who absolutely, you get that, don't you, where they think they should be playing.
Yeah.
I remember Mark Nicholas was bloody good at, when I wasn't picked as a young pro, I used to go and ruck and say, why am I not playing? He's gone, well, I tell you what, you go away and get wickets in the second team, in the next 2 games, and I'll pick you. Is that all I've got to do? Yeah. And don't go at 5s or 6s. Yeah. Okay. Is that, there's the clarity. And he used to pick me when I used to go and get So I don't know why I've gone there. I just saw that, and you mentioned Mark. He was bloody brilliant for me as a young pro because he gave me absolute clarity. So my message there to young bowlers as well, we do it for our bowlers where Pete is brilliant when it comes to why they're not playing. And I listen carefully because I'm like, okay, we've got to go away and work on that, haven't we? Pete wants you to win the battle for off stump more than you're doing at the moment. Right. Let's come up with a way to do that. And that's such an important thing for young bowlers to do, wherever they are, but generally it's in county cricket when they're desperate to make that move up, is absolutely seek clarity as to what you've got to do to get in. That might give you an idea as to how you've got to train.
I'd agree with that. That's something that I think, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm getting old, but I do feel that there's been younger bowlers that are just waiting for that opportunity, not really working hard to shove themselves in that team and get the other player out, and make it difficult for selection. They kind of just sit, wait, and it's like, that's not the way you should be thinking. I've had this thing, I've said this in many appraisals I've had before, is when my time's up, my time's up. I wouldn't be bitter about being dropped or whatever else, but I'm going to make it as difficult as possible through performances to, one, make them better. And when the time is right that the young lads come and take my space, they'll be better bowlers for it rather than just me, just me finishing and then just, all right, now's my time. And then they're having to find the way more because they haven't put the hard yards in earlier in their career.
And I remember coming to watch. So I used to go to Warwickshire quite a lot to watch Wokesy.
Yeah.
And I'd be watching all the warm-up overs and everything. I used to always get there early. Once again, when you're learning about players, I used to get there early. And Barks, we were desperate to get you onto programmes, but you had injuries, didn't you? You struggled with those a little bit at times when we were really, really curious because we desperately wanted left armers. But you've got 530 odd wickets at 25, haven't you?
Yeah.
And at that point you didn't, but you could see how you get them because of your consistency, because of your skill. I used to watch you doing your warm-up overs, and it was, funnily enough, it was the same ball time after time after time. When you came to India that time, you had a beautiful away swinger. Can you remember the one that we were trying to work on, which was the left-hander stuff?
Yeah.
And I had to try and get you to jump out of your bunker a little bit because to go to the subcontinent, you needed something extra.
Yeah.
So there's that. When we're talking about youngsters, you were really happy to jump out of your bunker and go with something different. Barks, you've kept bowling the same ball over and over again and taken the majority of your 500 wickets, but you've learnt some other craft in there. But I think the message is the hard work. Probably stubbornness in there at some point as well, but the honest reality about what it takes to be a fast bowler. I just hope we're still getting that message in there for young fast bowlers as well.
Yeah.
To be fair, you just bowl wobble now, Shiny. So don't worry.
Don't say that, Wrighty. That's the day I will be retiring. You lads can come and have a go.
Brilliant. Right. I think this feels like a natural point to finish the podcast because we've been 2 hours and it's been epic. There's been internet problems, so I'll clean this all up and I apologise if I can't get it perfect. But Shai, thanks so much for your time. This is
been a pleasure,
longest interview. Yeah, longest one we've done, and I'll be honest, we could probably keep going down rabbit holes for another 2 hours.
I feel like that's one of those where we'll have to get you back on for other stuff we probably haven't managed to come over and get through. But yeah, it's been
love to get me on with someone like Pop, so we can really go into old.
Wow! That'd be amazing.
That would be cool.
That's something might have to put in the pipeline, definitely.
Oh, you know what? I'll throw this one out there. How about we get yourself, Pop, Matt Mason, and Richo, and we could do like a round table. Keith and I could just literally say lateral flexion and just let you all go. Or do you know what I mean? Like a round table. That might be fun.
Yeah.
That would be fun. All absolute diamond blokes. That would be funny.
Yeah, no, that would be cool. Right. Well, look, thanks so much, Shiny, and thanks
pleasure,
to everyone.
lads. Thank you for having me on there.
Cheers, Shiny.
Our pleasure. Take it easy.
Right, I'm going to be listening to the podcast. Who did you do yesterday?
David Milnes.
Is he on there yet?
No.
Okay, no. I look forward to that one.
We'll get them all. We'll get them all up and running, and we'll probably, to be fair, we'll get this one out soon, Shiny, because it's been first class. So
brilliant. Thank you, lads. Really
take it easy. See ya.
You're welcome.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening, everyone. This has been an absolute marathon podcast and a brilliant one. So make sure you give us loads of positive reviews because this is extra special.